Is it just me, or are role-playing games kind of getting worse? Not because of graphics, bugs, or even monetization, but because they're being simplified to death. Somewhere along the way, the right way to design an RPG became to strip it down, round it off, and file away all the little complexities until the only thing left is this hollow power fantasy. I get it. I mean, games want as many players as possible, and so decisions get made to make it more palpable. But we've gone from welcoming players to patronizing them. Simplification isn't just making RPGs easier, it's making them less interesting, less reactive, less rewarding, and worst of all, less of a role-playing game. So today, I want to talk about systems and why they matter, why complexity in RPGs isn't just good, it's kind of the entire point. Recently, I was playing through the Oblivion remaster, and it struck me just how simple so many systems have become in modern games. In Oblivion, we could craft entire spells, then that kind of just went away in Skyrim, and in Veilguard, I mean, just don't even get me started. Though it's an old game, Oblivion manages to capture so much of what we're looking for in role-playing games. There's so many ways that I can interact with the game and make my own choices. But now, when I play many of the modern RPGs, I'm being handheld through the entire experience. Take something as simple as health. In Diablo 2, even though they weren't the deepest, there were interesting choices to make dominantly caused by inventory management for my potions. Now, in Diablo, I just have to make sure I pick up health globes that drop from every enemy, or pop a potion the game has automatically given me on cooldown. That's it. No real decision making there. We used to meticulously manage and craft our potions in Morrowind, weigh the risks of infection in Neo Scavenger, or plan expeditions around scarce healing in Underrail. Don't even get me started on the depth of Kenshi. If you're like me, you crave games that offer intricate systems to explore. You value figuring things out, making meaningful choices with real consequences, and feeling your understanding of the game grow over time. Why has this changed? Why is this reduction happening? RPGs used to be built on depth, choice, and complex systems, but now there is a pervasive trend towards simplification. These simplifications of modern mechanics, from health to crafting to stat decisions, directly remove layers of strategic decision-making, ultimately leading to shallower experiences. This is fundamentally changing what it means to play an RPG. This push to arcadeify games is attempting to make the game more accessible and reach a broader audience, but the approach here is a mistake. There's an erroneous assumption from people who don't actually understand the audience that deep systems scare off players. But what actually scares people off is shallow designs that restrict engagement. Players just get bored. Oversimplification of systems seems like a good idea on the surface. However, it prevents players from deeply engaging with the game world and its mechanics. There's this idea in modern game design that if a system isn't immediately clear, then it must be bad design. That if a player doesn't instantly understand every stat, every mechanic, every interface icon, then the system is too complicated and must be streamlined. But streamlining systems too much doesn't make games more engaging. It makes them more passive. These games might see more players on launch, but they will inevitably lose player retention down the line. Think back to exploration in an older RPG like Morrowind. It throws you into the world with a vague journal, some scribbled directions, and the assumption that you're going to figure it out. After a while, you do. You start noticing landmarks, asking NPCs for directions, and analyzing notes and clues. You're actually thinking. You're engaged. And that's why people loved these old RPGs. Not because they were hard to learn, but because they allowed you to. The way it communicated with you respected you enough to believe you could figure it out. When systems are stripped down, there's less for players to engage with. In contrast, look at more modern RPGs like Starfield. There's a glowing line. You follow it, you reach the objective, watch the cutscene, do the thing, and you're done. Sure, I mean, it works, it's functional, the quest is complete, but it's not engaging. You don't actually care about the quest or its impact in the world. You're not solving anything or figuring anything out. You're not discovering, you're just being led. It's like developers are designing role-playing games for players that don't actually want to play them. If you think about it, how a game communicates with you is a pretty clear reflection of what the developer wants you to focus on. An ideal system communicates information in a timely manner, stays relevant to the situation, gives just enough support to understand the system, and does not handhold the player. Does it give you room to experiment, or does it just tell you what to do? Does it give you systems and let you connect the dots between them, or does it flatten everything out into a checklist? Let's be clear, I'm not saying every system should be obscure and confusing. Clarity matters. Good interface matters. But clarity does not mean the same thing as simplification. It's not about reducing what's being said, but choosing how to say it. You want to give your players a reason to invest, a reason to keep exploring, and a reason to stay engaged. What's important here is layering the information being communicated so that it's not all presented on screen at the same time, but it's given to the player in stages and, importantly, at the right time. Consider crafting a custom spell in Oblivion. You don't start knowing every magic effect in the game. You discover those through books, trainers, quest rewards. You experiment or learn the spell effects from existing spells to discover what they can actually do. At a spell-making altar, you can see the details you need to make the spell. You see how you can combine them. The cost, duration. The system communicates the more powerful effects or combinations and the increased cost. You don't see all this information whenever you cast the spell. That's not necessary there. But once you are casting the spell, you learn more relevant information about it, which is appropriate for that time. How much damage it does, the type of damage, what it's good against. If all of the information revolving around the spell crafting was shown whenever you were casting a spell, of course it would be overwhelming. But it's not. It's layered in at appropriate moments to communicate to you effectively. Now, contrast that with how ability customization or item modification is often handled in more simplified role-playing games, like, say, Marvel's Avengers. When you complete a mission, you receive a piece of gear. It's got a power level, but there's not much more to it beyond its stats. There's really nothing to do except equip it if its number is bigger, then wait for the next item to replace it. Yes, you are getting more powerful, but it's such a basic choice. If the number is bigger, put it on. See the difference? See how even with something like enhancing your gear or customizing your abilities, depth and layered information matter. Oblivion's system, for all its quirks, makes you engage with its world, understand its rules, and actively participate in creating powerful, personalized effects. It accomplishes this by layering the information of a complex system over time and at an appropriate moment. Marvel's Avengers, like many RPGs, just went with the simplest system of biggest number better. Yes, the system is easier to understand, but there's no choice there. When deep systems are communicated well through layering, they create engagement, and engagement comes from active participation, learning, experimenting, interpreting. These systems ask for your attention, give you space to learn, and don't explain everything. They create investment and reward curiosity. When you master a deep system, it doesn't just feel good, it feels earned. This type of play, through deep systems and layered communication, creates immediate engagement, but also longer-term retention. Systems that have a lot to figure out naturally require more of our time to do so. We can theory craft about a system, or we can share our learnings on Reddit or do research on a wiki. It lets us wonder how we can be more effective beyond a simple skill check. Unfortunately, you'll never get that from the Veilguard healing system. It's just not deep enough. RPGs should respect the player. They should respect our time, but also our intelligence, our curiosity, and our desire to become someone inside the game world. Games designed like these keep the player engaged and playing for longer. The The whole reason we play RPGs is because we want to become part of the world and therefore part of its systems. We want to learn it, grow with it, and shape it. When a game lets us do that, it becomes more than just a game. It becomes a real experience. Complexity and depth fuel interconnected systems and create opportunities for rich, compelling gameplay loops that have consequences. When this fuel is removed, the game isn't just easier, it becomes predictable. In other words, when systems get too straightforward, the game gets boring. A complex system is one that creates opportunities for us to be surprised, like discovering an unexpected interaction or facing an unforeseen consequence. When systems have depth, it allows for moments which are unexpected to happen, which results in meaningful difficulty. Something that goes beyond just boom, you're dead, and where the overarching challenge of the situation presented is more complex and nuanced than binary win or lose situations. Let's take a pretty standard combat scenario in Stalker Gamma, which has a pretty interesting health system. The player doesn't just have a basic health bar. Their entire character is broken up into subsections for limbs. Each limb has its own health pool, and they can take damage independently. There's also various damage effects which can target each limb, which then cause your character to react in various ways. As a player, you have a lot of choices about how to respond to a limb taking damage or being broken. Medkits, stimpaks, all of which have different functions, but they also take effort and resources to craft and are limited by weight to create even more tension and choice. In a single combat encounter in Stalker, you may have to interact with all of those systems, each with nuance. When an enemy attacks you, the type of damage it does, where it hits you, how much it hit you for, whether you can escape or not, they all become part of the decision matrix you, as a player, need to manage. Whereas in Veilguard, if you take damage, all you need to do is chug a health potion, which can be found anywhere, or have a companion that can heal you every 30 seconds. It's not very meaningful. This kind of systemic interconnectedness unlocks a great deal of compelling gameplay, and by exploring seemingly simple systems like character health, we can see how it interacts with a game's core combat loop, which creates pressure. We covered difficulty, but closely connected to that is the game's overarching tension. If health recovery is easy, the consequences for taking damage disappear. Compare the constant background dread of managing infection in Project Zomboid, or scarce healing in Metro, with simply needing to avoid damage for a few seconds in something like Assassin's Creed. Simple health systems result in simple enemy encounters. When a player is able to shrug off or quickly heal from most incoming damage, the complexity of the enemy attacks is equally simplified. There's only so much they can do if they can't break your leg or apply a poison debuff to you. In the earlier example from Stalker, carrying medkits around isn't a simple decision because they weigh something, so you can't carry infinite and you'll eventually run out of them. Over time, this results in players having to make even harder decisions as they simply run out of the ability to heal. This results in attrition gameplay, one of the most interesting side effects of health mechanics. Finally, when systems have complexity, it can result in a series of cascading failures. What started as just a damaged limb turns into an infection, which turns into dehydration, which turns into a desperate struggle to find antibiotics and water. And this is what makes games memorable. Oversimplification may make games easier, but it also makes them forgettable. Of course, health is just one example. We can easily make similar comparisons to complex crafting with quality levels or potential failures in games like Kingdom Come Deliverance versus simple collect X, press button recipes that games like Assassin's Creed use. Simplified crafting leads to simplified economies and often result in easily solved strategies and repetitive gameplay. The challenge diminishes quickly once the loop is understood. True depth makes these hard, if not impossible, to solve for, and that's what we want. Though these decisions aren't as in the moment as the ones in Stalker with regards to health, the depth here creates way more meaningful choices. And meaningful choices are what creates interesting and engaging moments. Beyond very nuanced systems like health or crafting, true systemic depth where multiple systems interact creates unpredictable and exciting emergent situations. In games like Project Zomboid, even the sleep mechanic is deep and full of interesting choice. You need to sleep in order to keep up your stamina so that you can run from zombies and not die. But where can you sleep in this zombie-infested world? You need to find somewhere safe because while you're sleeping, the zombies may smell you, track you down, and kill you while you're unconscious. Compare that to Days Gone, where you just log out. The game does not go on without you, and you're safe until you log back in. Okay, maybe Days Gone doesn't need a complex sleeping mechanic to be a good game, but it would certainly be a more compelling one with it. With oversimplified games like these, first the game may feel easy to understand, but a few hours in, you start to get that feeling of sameness. The fights blur together and the decisions stop mattering. Suddenly, you're not role-playing anymore, you're just pressing buttons in the right order. When systems become passive and automated, something the game takes care of for you, and no longer something the player has to manage, you lose meaningful sources of tension and friction. But that need to think is what makes RPGs so powerful. Why walking into a dungeon with no health potions feels scary, and making it out alive feels earned. Why is that being taken away? This is the part that frustrates me so much. Developers keep saying that they want to let players shape their characters in the world, but then they remove every opportunity for us to do just that. To be honest, I think we did this with the Diablo 3 skill tree. We took what was probably one of the most iconic and beloved progression systems in RPG history, Diablo 2 skill tree, and just kind of flattened it. We made it streamlined and user-friendly and easy to understand, but in the process, we also made it kind of boring. By streamlining it, we took away a lot of the opportunity for players to really think about builds in Diablo 3. Our intent was to allow players to swap skills easily, hoping that they would be more likely to experiment. However, being able to change so easily means you lose the feeling of intentionally crafting a build. There's no consequence to making the wrong decision. There's no tension, no long-term commitment. At worst, you could swap entire gear sets with another player, giving you a sense that your gear was simply rented. In Diablo 2, when you placed a point in the skill tree, you really had to think about it. Because respeccing wasn't trivial, you needed to spend more time thinking about your decision. Maybe you did some research, maybe you had a build in mind, maybe you just picked up an item that made you regret your last few choices. Whatever it was, those trees had meaningful prerequisites, branches, dead ends, and significant trade-offs. This type of deep progression system with truly different build paths are major drivers in replayability. Many live service games of today obsess over player retention, using poor systems like notification, delayed rewards, or daily quests to keep players coming back. But games with deep and long progression systems with strong reward structures have been bringing players back forever without needing to rely on those negative reinforcements. That's why we're seeing remasters like D2 and Oblivion become so incredibly popular. The whole point of an RPG is to engage with the world, to experiment, to fail, to make an informed decision. You can't do this without meaningful systems. Simplification doesn't just reduce depth, it reduces ownership. And when that happens, it won't be an RPG anymore. The trend is clear. Simplifying role-playing game systems may make them easier to grasp, but it comes at a steep cost. So we have to ask ourselves, are we okay with RPGs becoming less demanding and potentially less rewarding if it means more players will purchase at launch? Are we okay with an initially easy to grasp game, but one that eventually results in reduced engagement, increased predictability, and fewer meaningful choices? Thankfully, not every RPG is headed down this simplification path. We've seen a recent resurgence in games that trust and respect the player. Baldur's Gate 3, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Expedition 33. These games are dense, they don't explain everything, and they're better for it. Playing these games reminds me of why I fell in love with RPGs in the first place. Not because they were easy, but because they were mine. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you found this interesting. What other modern games have you found that actually respect player intelligence and offer deep systems worth mastering? Share them below in the comments so that we can highlight these experiences and share them with each other and keep the spirit of role-playing game design alive. For now though, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.